Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Friends, now I'm going to talk about economic systems, especially the system of economic system called capitalism. This is capitalism. We all now admit that we are in the era of capitalism. In order to understand what capitalism is all about, I have to remind you that there have been non-capitalist economies which are run basically on the basis of customs and traditions. Of course, there are these customs and traditions had certain types of economic institutions which allowed for economic expansion. But capitalism is a particularly interesting system of economy. It's a particularly interesting way in which the resources are managed. I had previously was talking about rationality. I had mentioned rationality is the application of reason to match means. And I was saying that rationality is a kind of strategy to make sure that you maximize your gain and minimize your cost. But as I was mentioning earlier, rationality is very peculiar to capitalism because it is in capitalism that rational logic goes to the furthest extent. I will explain that within a few moments, but there are different types of rationality that to which I want to draw your attention right now. There is rationality of the type, for instance, you are building a temple, you are a big devotee of some god. Your idea is to attain spirituality. You think that by building a big temple, you will attain moksha or you will attain punya, and that will ensure that you will ultimately be rid of this cycle of birth. If you are a Hindu, if you are a Christian, you have the goal. For instance, if you want to build, if you are building a church, you feel that you are doing the work of God on earth. Whatever it is, this kind of rationality is, when you are talking like this, you are applying reason, and if you are applying reason to attain a given cultural value, cultural goal of the society, then it is a kind of a culture-bound rationality. We have culture-bound rationalities, and more I want to mention that culture-bound rationality is the order of the day, even though I am talking about capitalism. In capitalism, as we are given to understand, it is capitalism, rationality breaks the bounds of culture. That the famous thinker Karl Marx mentioned when he was talking about capitalism, capitalism is the system which it is the system which breaks down all Chinese walls of tradition. That means all the traditional institutions will be broken down by capitalism, because capitalism is a powerful economic force. What is it that gives power to capitalism? It is what is called instrumental rationality. This is a very interesting concept. This was introduced by the famous sociologist Max Weber, who is regarded as one of the fathers of modern sociology. Now, what is instrumental rationality? It is application of rationality to not towards attaining a particular value, say mukti from this world, moksha from this world, or in order to preserve your family as as a institution, or to promote nationalism or these values. Instrumental rationality is rid of all these cultural encumbrances, and it focuses purely on the task of making money, making money and to make more and more money. This is making profit for profit's sake. This is that you want to gain more and more and more, not because you want to, if you are making profits, you want to, if you have, 100 crores of profit today, you want to make 200 crores of profit tomorrow and 300 crores of profit tomorrow. You all the time wanting to, relentlessly keep on accumulating more and more of what is called rewards. That is instrumental rationality. When you are applying reason only to, get your gain, that kind of, approach is highly self-centered and selfish, that you want to make more and more of gain, and in order to make more and more of gain, you don't care about the values that obtain in a society. You don't care about whether you are going to cheat people or what have you. You continuously make more and more money, and in order to get the satisfaction of having great profits. If you have 1,000 crores today, you are not happy, you want to make it 2,000 crores and 3,000 crores and so on. You see, actually human beings are not like this. At some stage they say that, well, enough is enough. We have made enough money to last for 7 generations. Why should I might as well, instead of relentlessly pursuing profit, I might as well do something else. All right? Instrumental rationality is also about, you don't have friendships. If you can gain something out of your friend, if you can make more money out of your friend, you would even, you might have to compromise with the secrets that he has, shared with you. And if those secrets will enable you to play in the market and make more money, even at the expense of betraying him, you are prepared to do it. That is instrumental rationality. Now, Max Weber says that it is this instrumental rationality that is the crucial engine of capitalism. That is what now today we are having capitalism. That means that we are having a system of economic system by which the pursuit of gain for its own sake has taken over, has taken charge. But that doesn't explain, that is the principle that's operating within capitalism. But that doesn't explain what capitalism is all about. Why do we call it capitalism? Because it is important to stress on the term capital. Capital, capitalism is a system of economic system in which capital, the needs of capital determines the economic structure. What is capital? Capital is the means, is the amount of resources you have accumulated in order to produce more. Capital is not gold in the lockers of banks. Capital is when you convert the gold into money so that you can buy more of machines, so that these machines can be used to produce more. So, capitalism is a system in which you accumulate assets, all right, accumulate wealth in order to produce more. Capital is those assets which are used to produce more. And it is said that in capitalism, it is the needs of capital that become dominant. Why is it that the needs of capital become dominant? Because in under capitalism, I was saying that capitalism is a system in which capital becomes the most important engine of economic operations. If economy works, if the economy is a car, it's the capital that's the engine which pushes it forward. So, what is capital? I mentioned that capital are assets which are used to produce more of goods and services that we require. That means you invest the assets that you have, invest the resources that you have to generate more of goods and services. Now, under capitalism, when does capital dominate? Capital you require for starting any business. Even in the past, when you did not have capitalism, when there was feudalism, you needed land to produce agricultural output. But in capitalism, what happens is that this acquisition of assets to produce goods becomes the most dominant form of what shall I say, the acquisition of capital becomes the most dominant activity in the economic system, and it's not hemmed in by constraints of custom and law and by constraints of customs and traditions. Now, in order for the system to become capital, people have to accumulate. That means they have to save more, the savings should increase. They have to keep on saving more and more of what they earn so that they can have capital to invest. Now, a system in which there is saving becomes dominant, all right, for investment is the system that capitalism produces. Now, under capitalism, because you are giving more and more attention on assets, what becomes important is that the people who actually produce goods and services are relegated to a secondary position. According to some Marxist, according to Marx himself, capital, when you acquire enough of resources, and let's say you acquire, you become a big capitalist, like for instance money. You have so much, so many, several thousands of crores of capital assets, in terms of land, in terms of buildings, in terms of factories, and so on. Now, these assets that you have, are such that it gives you enormous power to compel people to work for you and make sure that they work, in such a way that they produce more than you actually pay them. You see, this is the point. If you are, let's say there is a factory I have opened as a capitalist. I got these machines. I have paid for these machines, and now I hire workers. When I hire workers to work for 10, 12 hours a day, 8 hours a day, that's the Factory Act says 8 hours a day. When I hire these workers, I have actually bought their service, whatever I can command them in the factory to do what I want them to do. Otherwise, I can say that, look, go out, we will not pay you the the wage, the daily wage. And because I have this enormous capital, I can use the law. For instance, if the worker does not work, if he is not putting enough effort, I can change him. I can say that you go and I will hire another person because he also wants to work. Actually, workers, whereas as a person who is a capitalist, who has got assets, I am all powerful, whereas the workers who come to me to work, come to my factory to work, have nothing, don't have the machines to produce anything. It is they who, they only have the labor to, sell to the capitalists in order to earn their wage. So the workers become under the regime of capital, the discipline of capital. If you must have visited, if you visit any factory, for instance, Maruti factory, you will in Gurgaon, what you will find is that there is if the worker comes, as he comes in, he has to clock in, he has to punch a card saying precisely the time at which he comes. And he is given a job to attend to a particular machine. His job is to move one part and fix it to another, to the chassis of the car that is coming on the assembly line, and the chassis of the car is moving at a particular speed, and you have to constantly be at your job, constantly be giving attention and putting these parts onto the chassis of the car as is instructed by you, by the capitalist. Now, when you are doing it, you have lost your freedom. You can't, even if you want to go to the bathroom, you can only go to the bathroom for 2 minutes. And your lunch time is fixed. You can only spend half an hour or 45 minutes in the canteen for lunch, and you cannot leave the factory till 8 hours of work is complete. The moment even if there is 1 minute left, you are expected to be at your job. So this is the kind of discipline that capital imposes on the workers who do not own capital. So according to Marx, it is this feature, that is, on the one hand, there are capitalists who have lots of capital and they deploy this capital to hire workers, and they use the workers to precisely produce the things they want them to do in a precise, orderly way. If there are 10 workers on an assembly line, they should all coordinate as is prescribed by the rules of the factory. There are supervisors to ensure that each one of you is putting in the maximum effort. You cannot afford to relax. So this is the system of production which is called capitalism. This is how capitalism works. You should have noticed, when I am talking about capitalism, I am talking about production. I am talking about producing goods and services, all right, increasing value of, I am using raw materials, I am paying workers wages so that I can produce something which will give me more than what I have spent on the workers and the machines and the raw material that I use. That surplus that I get is called profit. Profit is a surplus that I get. Usually, people think that profit is the value that the capitalist gets for the effort, for the risks that he takes to invest in the production of certain things, because you don't know whether your venture will succeed, whether your production, whether what you produce will be accepted by the market and all that. But some people say that all this surplus is Marxist, especially Marx says that this surplus is basically what the worker produces. The surplus is actually the value that the worker adds to the machines and the raw materials that are used in the work process. And according to him, according to Marx, it is this surplus that the capitalist robs from the workers and appropriates it in order to make more capital, in order to increase his capital outlay, and in order to increase his production. Be that as it may, I don't want to go into this controversy. This has been going on for a long time. But what I am interested in pointing out is that in this capitalism, production of goods and services is the very key aspect of the economy. Now, having said that, what is important here is how is it that people are able to accumulate capital. I have to talk about accumulation of capital. Because in all societies, there are systems, there are institutions that allow the accumulation of capital. But this in capitalism, accumulation of capital takes on a particular character. That is that you can increase the accumulation of capital for because of several institutions that are operating in the society. One is the institution of private property. Two is the institution of corporation or right. Three is competitive markets. Four is the financial system. Right. Now I'll explain this, explain each of these features systematically. Now, what is this institution of private property? You see, in all societies, there are, there is the notion of property is there. Of course, not all this property is private property. It can be, public property. I'll give you one very simple example. In our villages, usually, our villages were organized such a way, people had owned land for cultivation, for producing food and other raw materials, but there used to be a patch of land which was free to everyone, all right, which can be used by everyone. You can use that patch of land to graze your cows, the children can go and play there, all right, and if you want some twigs, you can go and collect some twigs, collect some firewood, all right, and so on and so forth. And then there used to be property which is communally owned. The entire village owns that property. If there is a well, if there is a pond, the entire village owns the pond. You can't determine who will come and use that pond and who will not. Everyone is allowed to use the pond. You have a right because you are residing, you are a resident of the village, you are a member of the village, you have a right to use the water of the lake in which you use the water of the lake to irrigate your land. All right, this is called usufruct property. That is, you have only right to use the public resources that are there in the village. Similarly, there are certain property systems in which you can occupy certain amount of land. This happens in the case of tribal economies. You know, if in the tribal economies, you know, there is this shifting cultivation when each of the lineages lineages in the tribe are given one particular portion of the forest to cultivate. What they do is they go there and take over the land, burn the forest, and when the forest is burned down, on the ashes they throw seeds and wait for the crops to come. All right, but once they have taken out the crop once or twice or thrice, 3 years, then they will have to give up that plot of land and move elsewhere. The entire tribe moves elsewhere, and therefore nobody wants that piece of land. In fact, what is very interesting is in several of our tribal communities in the northeast, many of the tribes owned entire mountains, all right, vast mountains, because they used to grow food, and they used to use the mountains for their daily needs. Now that modern economic forces have crept in, people are now claiming that my father had used this piece of land, it belongs to me. So they are making the public property into private one. So you can have a form of public property, in which you only have the right to the resources, the right to enjoy the fruits of the property. You have another system of property in which you can use the property, all right. You can occupy the property and use it to cultivate. You occupy the land and use it to cultivate, food for a particular period of time. But in private property, what happens is that you take entire control over the land, or over the machine, or over the even nowadays in this knowledge economy, even the patents that you buy in the market, you have entire you are the owner, full owner of the property, and you are free to do what you want with it. If you want to use this land to have a big commercial mall, you are free to do it. Nobody can ask you questions, because you have entire, what shall I say, on the land, water, whatever there is on that piece of land, you can the soil that you have, the trees that you have, nobody can object when if you go and cut down the trees that are growing in that in that part of the land that you have owned as a private property. So private property is a system, is a proprietarial arrangement in which the person who buys he can buy the piece of land. It comes into the market, all right. You can buy a piece of machinery. If you want to, if you are a photographer and you want a camera, if you buy a camera, that becomes your capital, and you have every, whatever you want to do with the camera, you can do with it. Similarly, if you have a computer, it becomes your private property. Now you don't have to you don't have to give it to and share it with anybody. Whereas in a public property system, you have to share. You have to share water that's flowing in the river. If you own the river, then if rivers can also be sold, all right, then it becomes private property. In fact, in several places, these natural resources become private property. I'll give you this example of the spectrum waves, all right, radio waves. They are natural waves, but the companies which tap those waves, they have got the bandwidth, which are able to access those bandwidth. The government auctions them, auctions your access to that. Then you own it, all right. if you own that bandwidth, you can sell it to any company which wants to use that bandwidth to project it, to send internet messages across, to send videos across, and so on and so forth. So private property is a system in which the owner has full freedom. What is important is the owner has freedom to buy and sell. All right, property. Why is this necessary? By the freedom to buy and sell. It is said that only when somebody owns property fully, you will be able to know the value, the price of the property in the market. Now, if if it is a public property, all right, there is, of course, there are scandalous stories of people selling off Eiffel Tower in Paris, whereas nobody can sell it off. It's a public property. But if Eiffel Tower was your own, then you could sell it off as an antique piece, all right, and make millions of dollars. Now, the value of that Eiffel Tower, you can put it out in the market. You can publish information that you are selling, all right, a piece of land or whatever property that you have, and a factory that you have. You see, for instance, in several of the cities in India, there used to be factories. Factories that the government sold land to these private enterprises to produce goods, and these private enterprises established, let's say produce cotton. They used to erect cotton mills. Now what happened was that these cotton mills made losses, all right, and these cotton mills had to be closed down. That's what happened with the jute mills of Kolkata also. But now the owners of those mill, now they find, earlier they had made losses. Now they had let it go to ruin, the factory go to ruin. Now the owners of those mills are finding that it's very valuable property for them, because there are many construction companies who want that huge piece of land that they have and build an apartment complex, and they are willing to pay a lot of money for them to sell it, all right. Now they say that the piece of land which was considered almost worthless, all of a sudden becomes a worthwhile proposition, a sellable proposition. That means it acquires a value. And one of the things with private property is that when you can evaluate the price of everything, then you can also systematically calculate, and only when you are able to calculate systematically and exactly, then it will be possible for you to exactly predict, exactly know how much profit you have made. Not just you'll be able to know whether you have made profits or loss, and whether you have made more profits this year than the profit that you made last year. And there is calculation, and that calculability is important, because only when you calculability is important, because only when you calculate you can know how much profit you make. Not only that, you will know at what price you have to sell a particular thing in order to recover the money that you have invested, and so on. And in capitalism, calculations are important. That is why you have the system of double entry, where you have liabilities on one side and assets on the other side, and you will know exactly whether you are making profits or loss every year. So, this thing, private property is important, calculability is important. You have to know the price of everything. That means in order to have calculability, you should have money. Money plays a major role in the economy, in speeding up transactions. And you should have, if you don't have money, if you only have a barter system, then it will be impossible for you, for the system to expand, because every time you have to take exactly the, in a barter system you should know what exactly the other person wants. If I want to have pens and I don't have pens, I have some, let us say some book, all right. Now I have to take the book and find into the market and find out that person who wants my book, and he should be able to exchange my book for the number of pens I want, all right. So it becomes difficult. Therefore, you should have money. When you have money, you can calculate how much money you have paid, what is the price of things. So money becomes an important item in capitalism. Now, apart from money, why all this? Because as I said, in capitalism there is what I said earlier, there is in capitalism there is instrumental rationality. Instrumental rationality means that you invest some money now and produce something in order to sell it in the market, produce whatever you produce in order to make more money. This instrumental rationality implies that you should have property, private property, you should have money, you should have calculability, and more importantly, along with this, you should also have markets. Markets are important, all right. You have money, but you also should have markets. But what kind of markets? Markets in which there is free entry and free exit, because there are, anybody who wants to sell something, sell a particular good, can go to the market and say, and open a shop and say that this, offer the goods that he has to sell, all right. And anybody can go there and buy the goods. There is no this thing customary, custom by custom, there is nobody can object to anybody coming to buy goods. This is not this, you think this is simple in today's world, but it used to be the case in the past that markets were controlled. So people who sell used to form guilds, so that only the members of the guilds can sell the goods that they are selling. No other person can come and sell, and this means the number of people, the amount that you can sell can be determined by the guild system. Only you can sell it only at this price, everyone will follow. And similarly, there are markets in which caste considerations would prevent some of the oppressed castes to go into the market and buy things, all right. They will not allow. Or for instance, if there are impositions, if there are governmental impositions saying that you have to pay an entry fee, then market entry is restricted. Of course, there are some markets in which in order to enter you have to pay, but usually this is a market is supposed to be free for the buyers and the sellers. The idea is when there are when the market is free, then there will be large numbers of buyers and sellers, and when there are large number of buyers and sellers, there will naturally be competition between each of these buyers, and when there is competition, what happens is, if there are 10 buyers in the market for computers, all right, and you go to, there are shops which are selling, there is only 1 or 2 shops which are selling computers, all right, only one shop selling computer. The person who is selling the computer, because he is a monopolist, he can charge the price that he can, that he thinks he can get from you, all right. He can increase the price. If there are more sellers, then and they are competing with each other, then what you will do is, if one seller is quoting a high price, you will go to the next shop to find out what's the price at which he is selling the good. And because of this competition within the market, it so happens that the prices, if I'm selling a good at 10 rupees, and if my neighbor is selling a good at 8 rupees, everyone will go there, nobody will come to me. That means that I will be making losses, and I won't be able to sell my goods. Then I won't be able to earn the money to sustain my family. Therefore, I also have to reduce my price. And when there is competition, when there is urge to compete, then there is also urge to produce more and more, because if there are more people who are demanding things, what you do is you decide to produce those items that are in great demand, and you decide to reduce the production of those items which are in less of demand. So what happens is that markets determine what goods should be, the production of what goods should be increased, and the production of what goods should be reduced. It sort of, in this way, it allocates resources without any government's intervention. Now, I said that capitalism is about instrumental rationality, producing profit for profit's sake, more and more profit. Now, there should be an institution, a system which allows the production of more and more this profit continuously, and that is the system called joint stock company. All right, that's an arrangement, social arrangement called joint stock companies. Nowadays, they are called corporations for short, or they are called public limited companies. Why is it called public limited company? What is this? What is the great thing about these public limited companies? That's very important. Now, you see, as markets expand, as people come and buy more and more of goods, then naturally you are producing more and more. All right. There is another thing that happens. When there is competition in the market, when competition becomes intense, there are sellers who want to make profits, who are competing with other sellers, who want to make more profit. In order to make more profit, they will find out a way by which they can reduce the cost of production of their good, or they can increase the look of the good, or the way in which the efficiency with which that particular machine or watch works, so that you can make it more attractive for the same price. So when that happens, there will also be innovation. That is, people, there will be in the system, there is always a craving for people to find out better and better methods, better methods of producing something. That means the costs of production will keep going down in the entire economy. If I am able to discover a means by which I can make tea, I am a chai wala, I am making tea. If I can find out a way by which I can make tea at low expense, instead of using cooking gas, if I find that solar energy is there, which is cheaper to make tea, I will find out a method by which I can use solar energy to make tea, and that too better tea. Then I can sell it, I can sell it at the going rate, or I can even reduce the price so that I attract people to come and buy my tea. Actually this happened. You see, in South India, there is a in restaurants, South Indian restaurants, there are South Indians are very fond of idli, eating idli, and idli is steamed, and there is a restaurateur discovered that instead of using gas or firewood to to steam the idli atta, idli batter, he found that he can create boxes in which he can pass steam. You are making tea at one place and you are using water, you are heating water and you are producing steam. You use that steam, you have a system by which the steam goes through this box and heats up and cooks the idli, and and then you can sell it. And he sold it. So now, because he started doing that, this is the innovation. Because he started doing it, everyone else did it, and the price of idlis came down. So market competition in the market, free and fair competition in the market ensures that there will be innovations and the cost of production price will fall down and the prices will fall down, and everyone in pursuit of more and more greater and greater profit will end up making sure that that the price of many things in the market come down, and everyone's standard of living improves. All right, that is one. But more importantly, to ensure that the logic of instrumental rationality works, all right, you need a particular institution. You see, usually in our country, the tradition was that the businessman, take for this the Marwadis businessmen, if they are in a particular line, at some point of time, they get their brothers and their younger sons to come over and take over the business, and also extend that business in different areas of the country. All right, this is how it used to happen. All right, and this was by custom they used to do it. Of course, in India there have been very many famous businessmen who were exporting goods to India. Was a very thriving economy at one point of time. They used to export goods to most parts of the country, to most parts of the world, as the world was known then. And India was known to have, in the pre-British times, India is known to have contributed more than 40% of world trade. That means there were lots of people who were producing. There are lots of merchants who are selling goods, and that means there were people who are producing goods and so on. But usually what happens is that in an enterprise, in a father and son enterprise, if the son for some reason is not doing well, you will, he is making losses, all right, then what happens is that you are so fond of your son, the father is so fond of the son, he will say, "Acha, theek hai, this is, loss doesn't matter, I will give you some more money." That means you are allowing waste to take place, all right, in a kinship system, all right. It used to happen in many of these family enterprises, all right. So dynastic enterprises, this used to happen. Now, in a joint stock company, that's a very interesting, it's an interesting institution. What is this institution all about? You see, I have a very good idea to sell in the market. Let's say I have discovered how to produce engines that can run on water, all right. I got a patent, but I don't have capital. I want to set up a factory, but I don't have capital. What can I do? I open a joint stock company. In fact, many people did it, in India. So I open a joint stock company. In the joint stock company, what's the joint stock company? Joint stock company is that I'll say in the market that I want about 500 crores of rupees, all right. I want 500 crores of rupees, I want to collect 500 crores of rupees. So what I do is I divide these 500 crores of rupees into shares, that is papers, share certificates, certificates of say share certificates that can be sold for 100 rupees per certificate is a share. That means that 500 crores defined, that means that I will be selling about 5 crores of certificates in the market at the rate of 100 rupees each. What do the people who buy my certificates get? That means if I have bought a 100 rupees share, if somebody has bought a 100 rupee share in my company, that means he is also a owner to the extent of 100 rupees. If he has bought shares worth 100 crores, then he will be a owner to the extent of 1/5 of my company capital. Now what does this ownership entitle him to? All right, he entitles, in this joint stock company, you have the shareholders meetings. They are supposed to take the decisions about how to run the company, about the who should be appointed, and so on and so forth. And here in this democratic system, what is important is not the person, the number of people who are there in this company, who are members of the company, who have bought shares, but the number of shares. For every share you have a vote, all right. So that means if there are 2 people who have bought 100 crores, shares worth of 100 crores, they will have a more decisive capacity, all right. They can say that they can outvote other shareholders and say, I want this person to be the managing director of the company, all right. Not only that, in this company, in such companies, what happens is that in such companies, what happens is that the profit that's made is is shared by the shareholders in the proportion of the shares that they own in the company, all right. And it's they who take the decision of so the profit is theirs. Of course, if there is loss, all the shareholders also suffer the loss. But if it's a private limited company, what happens is, in a private limited company, what happens is that your liability, if my firm makes a loss of 100 crores, all right. Now the debtors who come to me, who come to the firm, the corporation, to take back the money, to the loan, the money that they have lent, I as a shareholder my liability is only limited to the extent of shares that I have. If I have paid 100 crores, he can take that 100 crores, but he won't be able to take my private property, my house in which I am living, my car that I have owned, and so on. So your liability is limited. That means you will also be, if the company makes any mistake, you know that your liability is limited. That's one. And then 2, you can ensure that the company works very efficiently, because you can make sure that you have the best people to do the job, to make profits. If your company directors, if you just find that your company directors are inefficient or are slacking or not doing the work they are supposed to do, and they are going abroad and so on, then what they are enjoying life, they are spending more time in their leisure activities and so on. What you can do is you can you can sack that managing director and appoint a new one, with a more younger one who is more energetic, who is more intelligent, better trained to take over. So, if a situation where in a private enterprise, this usually happens in private enterprises. A successful businessman, once he has made enough money, enough capital, he says, why should I keep on, it's like my shop is open and it is running, let it run. Why should I unnecessarily try to make more and more money? What will I do with more and more money? All right. So, therefore, he can afford to take it, he takes it easy. But a corporation does not do it, because a corporation will, you can the shareholders can sack a person who is lazy and appoint a person who is more dynamic, more aggressive in the market. He wants to produce more and more. He wants to make more profit. So, therefore, a corporation, a joint stock company is ideal for the pursuit of instrumental rationality. And another thing I want to mention is that the joint stock company, although it consists of lots of shareholders, as a legal entity is regarded as a person, as one individual. All right. Just as it regards a citizen as an individual, it also regards a corporation as a limited company as an individual, and therefore what happens is that that company is it can be sued, and it can also sue. It can also go to the court saying that people are not paying, they have bought several things from me and they are not paying, what they owe me. You can you can go to the court and say that please make sure that the person gives me back the money, otherwise you allow me to auction his property and recover my money, my losses. You can say that. So, this is another feature of capitalism, that is that it is there is a modern corporation. And also another thing, the way the modern corporation works, it sort of institutionalizes instrumental rationality. A modern corporation institutionalizes instrumental rationality in yet another way. It's actually modern, the production system it organizes is such that rationality enters into the very way in which you organize work. So that, what happens is, this is called, Max Weber talked about bureaucracy as a rational system of organizing work, and a modern factory also institutionalizes adopts a rational manner in which work is divided, so that you can get every worker to produce the maximum amount he can. How can you do that? By division of labor, by dividing labor, by dividing a labor process into its elementary portions. Then you can give each of these smaller portions to one worker and make him entirely devoted to that particular portion. You can ensure that he becomes more and more specialized in doing that task, and therefore he will produce he will work at a faster rate and produce more and more, and help the entire factory to produce more of the goods. All right. Especially this can happen in the case when you have to produce a large number of cars or a large number of items, that are required in the market. Also, this is division of labor. You see, this division of labor is occurring all over the world. In fact, what you might have noticed that computers, all right, computers, now that everyone has laptops in academic institutions, you will find that academic institutions no longer have to hire so many clerks to type in the academic articles that they write, to type in the messages that are the orders that the vice chancellor or the chairman gives. All right, everything, the person who wants to communicate, any member can easily do that, all right, on the computer. So therefore, what happens is that by doing that, you can by systematic division of labor and organization, what you can do is you can reduce the time taken to do work, you can reduce the cost of doing the job, and you can ensure that more is produced for less. So this is the system that a corporation adopts, so that there is, the corporation produces more for less, all right. And this is a particularly important feature of modern capitalism. Thank you.